Good morning. It's been very interesting for me listening to the other presenters who are making a huge impact in the African continent. The IDC being one of the major players, we're quite excited to be here. I think some of you might be familiar with us because in South Africa we had a huge impact in terms of partnering the mining sector, specifically not only at primary level, but going all the way down to beneficiation. We're very proud in South Africa of having worked very hard with Kumba in exploiting the iron ore resources, working also very, very hard in the Karoo Basin with companies such as Kalahari in developing the manganese sector. But what's very important for us is that not only do we do mining, we also beneficiate. So some of you might be familiar with a company in South Africa called ArcelorMittal, where we're making steel, beneficiating both coal as well as iron ore and producing steel. What I'm going to share with you is really why we like to work very hard, some of you in the continent, because one of the areas that have been highlighted this morning is around how do we deal with some of the problem of the project that are coming up in the rest of the continent, particularly looking at how do we exploit these mineral resources when there is no infrastructure, and how the IDC can assist you with. So without spending too much time on the economics of South Africa, as we all know this morning from the minister, that is a highly well-endowed country with mineral resources, where the IDC has played a bigger role is across all these areas. Some of you might be familiar with South Africa, that it was known as the world gold producer. This is where we are today, that gold is still a major player, but PGMs have become a huge player, as well as iron ore, coal, and other minerals. So where we want to strengthen South Africa is not only in these primary areas, but to beneficiate some of these areas. As we're all aware, as we meet currently, we've got a huge challenge in the PGM sector. The iron ore sector as well has got some challenges, particularly with China slowing down in the past few months. So where do we see South Africa? We see a huge opportunity around manganese, chrome, copper, diamonds, nickel. And we'd like to deal with some of those, not only in South Africa, but everywhere. With the rand weakening in the past few weeks, also the mining sector provided quite a nice rand hedge for investors because most of the commodities are priced in dollars. So that's why the IDC would like to partner with some of you, because we can play a major role in terms of ensuring that South Africa does have hard currency if we exploit here the resources, not only South Africa, but in the rest of the continent. Where I would like to go is to move quickly and talk about what we want to do with the sector. I think in as much as many players that spoke this morning talk about what they're doing, whether it's in Liberia, it's in East Africa, what we want to do is that we want to ensure that the rest of the continent is industrialized. So when I ensure that in partnering with you, you're not only mining, but also through the investment that we hear today around power, that we build some of the beneficiation plant in the rest of the continent, particularly because that's where jobs are created, that we create more jobs in downstream beneficiation. So where do we see ourselves in this sector? In the African continent this morning, we heard about one of the players in the PVC area in this room. So we want to ensure that the solar industry, as it develops and it gets some of the inputs from the African continent. We know that if you look in the auto industry, the platinum, iron ore, and steel, manganese, and chromium are quite very useful inputs into that. So beneficiating these becomes very critical, because the numbers of Africans who are becoming middle class is growing at a very, very fast pace as we see growth in the rest of the continent. Wind turbines, particularly for East Africa and some of West Africa, where there's lots of wind. We believe that if we beneficiate with IDC as a partner, we'll be able to create a very vibrant industry, which will also supply some of these wind turbines as we exploit and diversify the energy sources in the rest of the continent. That in as much as Europe, China, and other American countries are advancing wind turbine production, we want those to be developed here. They can only be developed here by beneficiating a lot of the minerals that are being exploited in the rest of the continent. So the IDC would like to play with you to ensure that from mine to downstream beneficiation, we de-risk some of the project, because we don't want to have a huge risk alone using money that you got from your country of origin. So how do we finance the IDC as a financer? So the IDC has got really a nice bouquet of financial instruments where we try to invest with you as a partner to de-risk this project. What we don't do, because we don't have huge experience at the IDC, is that we won't assist you to get a tackle. As a private sector investor, you need to get tackle from the state authorities that are responsible for mineral resources. Secondly, this is an area where there's a huge market failure. By market failure, I mean that you will not get more funding for this area unless, of course, you're talking about Canada, where they've done very well in doing pre-feasibility work with players. So the IDC is very key in terms of where we know, and we've got geological work. We can put some money here in the discovery, but our biggest strength is in feasibility studies. We're very big in moving up all the way with you. Because the project earlier on here cannot take debt because there's no cash flows. So the IDC will put in some money for equity. So we want to come in early, put some equity money so that as we develop all the way, because there's no cash flow, and we do the feasibility, and once we've done the feasibility, bring other partners, then you can start bringing debt into that, because at least we're very sure that the resources is so much, the life of money will be so much, and therefore can bring some debt and put in some capital repayments to ensure that we'll pay back and service the debt when we start generating the cash flows. So our approach is very sectoral. As I said to you earlier, we are very key players in primary, but the biggest area where we want to switch, and we challenge some of you here who are exploiting resources in the rest of the continent, that that time is gone past whereby we only get exploitation of African resources at primary level. We want to see you going all the way to primary beneficiation and secondary beneficiation, because really those days are over. We've seen a lot of players coming to the continent, particularly Chinese players, who are taking a lot of African resources and shipping them without beneficiation. We're saying as IDC, with our African partners, that's enough is enough. We want companies, and want to play with companies that are looking industrializing the continent, going to primary beneficiation all the way to secondary beneficiation. That for us is very key. And I want to do that with you, providing you with various instruments. I said earlier that we'll take equity in early development. As the cash flows become certain, we'll put in some debt. But also with our partners in South Africa and the rest of the continent, we'll try and provide export finance facilities, because some of the equipment for building plants for primary beneficiation and secondary beneficiation aren't made in the rest of the continent. Therefore, we'll have to import those. So we can provide export finance, but more important, also guarantees to ensure that away with these exploiters of African resources want to play here, want to push with our partners in the rest of the continent, DFIs or Development Finance Institution, to ensure that these companies that have got contracts and African exploitation rights don't end up raping Africa, but they go all the way to ensure that Africa industrialize by us providing a financial package and doing that. Where we are very key as IDC is that we like to work with management that has got ability. So because we're a financer, so it's critical for us to get very strong management partners that ensure that they know what they're doing. More importantly, we also want people that are the visionary. By visionary, I mean not just exploiting African resources, by ensuring that you're part of industrialization story of the African continent. That from mine, we'll move on to primary beneficiation, all the way to fabrication, ensuring that South African goods and South Africa and Africa's industrialization becomes real, so that goods are produced in the African continent, and people, as middle class grows, can access those rather than importing them and impacting the balance of payments of the African economies. More importantly, also, we like experienced people who understand geology, understand mining, finance, and human capital. More importantly, mineral economics and risk management. So we also bring that package to you as the IDC. So also, we would have a very strategic outlook. As I mentioned to you, that, strategic outlook means that going beyond mining. And for the IDC, that's very critical, not only in South Africa, but in the rest of the continent. A key consideration for us is security of tenure. I said earlier that in terms of obtaining the mineral rights, we depend on you as an entrepreneur to ensure that you get that from the government authorities. Also, we need to ensure that in the African continent, the title is very, very important. We've had experiences in the rest of the continent, in the DRC, when Joseph Kabila came in, where title was threatened. So what we try to do as the IDC, work with the governments of the DRC to say to them, this cannot attract investors into the African continent. You need to ensure that there's title. And we've helped them quite a lot in ensuring that there is certainty of title. Because for Africa to develop and industrialize, we need to ensure that property rights are also respected. We also ensure that there's availability of long-term funding. So we're not a short-term financer. We stay with you long-term to ensure that the project is successful, but more importantly, being a development financer, that there is development of the country where you are an investor as a partner. This, for us, is non-negotiable. Participation by locals. I was very happy this morning that most of the presenters in this room spoke specifically around participation of locals. I mean, the story before me around what Oris Mining is doing in Malawi is a very fascinating story, because we cannot really exploit only. We need to ensure that it's a partnership, it's that sustainable mining. And also, there should be potential for adding additional resources. So for us, it's very important to ensure that the mineral policy, the predictable, and the investment is consistent with the mineral exploitation. There's clear, reliable reporting codes. So these are very important for us in terms of coming to investment decision as a partner with you. Therefore, if you bring a project, it must exhibit economic merit. There must be financial contribution by you, because we cannot de-risk that alone. But importantly, in South Africa, there's also a requirement for black economic empowerment as a law. So when I ensure that there's meaningful shareholding, we'll assist in funding that so that we comply with South African law, which requires black economic empowerment. So it's important for us that this investment also provide health and safety for workers, that labor is a critical stakeholder. It becomes part of a stakeholder in the mine or investment opportunity. You respect the environment, but also you work with us in infrastructure investment. So with those few words, I would like to thank you for listening to us. And we are available to be a partner with you. Please come and talk to us so that we can do business with you. Thank you very much.